Hey Vikings Nation! If you thought the Minnesota Vikings offseason couldn't get any more dramatic, hold on tight. Because a move involving one of the most legendary players in franchise history just shook the fan base. Yes, we're talking about Harrison Smith. Reports came out that the Vikings are releasing the veteran safety, and if that sentence made your heart drop for a second, you're not alone. But here's the twist. This move might not mean the end of Harrison Smith in purple and gold. That's right, Vikings fans. What looks like a shocking roster cut at first glance is actually a strategic procedural move that could change the team's salary cap situation. The Minnesota Vikings are designating Smith as a post-June 1 release, which allows the team to spread the cap hit over 2 seasons instead of taking the entire financial blow in 1 year. In today's NFL, cap flexibility is everything, and the Vikings front office knows it. But here's where things get really interesting. Even with this move announced, Harrison Smith hasn't made a final decision about his future. The Vikings themselves confirmed that the release does not indicate whether he will retire or potentially return for a 15th season in Minnesota. So the big question for Vikings Nation right now is simple. Are we witnessing the final chapter of a legend, or just a strategic pause before one more run? For fans who have followed the Minnesota Vikings for years, Harrison Smith isn't just another player on the roster. He's the heartbeat of the defense, a leader in the locker room, and one of the smartest safeties the NFL has seen in the last decade. Since being drafted by the Vikings back in 2012, Smith has been the definition of consistency and elite football IQ. And the numbers back that up. Even in the 2025 season, Smith proved he could still perform at a high level. He played in 15 games and recorded 54 total tackles, including 3 tackles for loss. On top of that, he added 2 interceptions, 1 sack, 1 forced fumble, and 1 fumble recovery. Not bad at all for a veteran entering the twilight of his career. What makes Smith's legacy even more impressive is his place in NFL history. With 39 career interceptions, he currently stands as the active leader among all players in the league. That's an incredible mark for a player who has spent more than a decade terrorizing quarterbacks while wearing the Minnesota Vikings uniform. And when we talk about Vikings history, Harrison Smith's name sits among the franchise greats. His 39 interceptions rank 4th all-time in team history. The only names ahead of him are Vikings legends Paul Krause with 53, Bobby Bryant with 51, and Ed Sherrickman with 40. That's elite company, and it shows just how special Smith's career has been in Minnesota. But let's talk about why this move happened now. Harrison Smith had a massive $25 million base salary guarantee that was scheduled to trigger later this week. Considering he turned 37 in February and would be approaching 38 during the 2027 season, the Vikings simply couldn't risk being locked into that kind of financial commitment without knowing his decision. So the front office made a smart procedural move. By designating him as a post-June 1 release, the Vikings avoid being immediately responsible for that $25 million guarantee while still keeping the door open for a possible return. In other words, this isn't a goodbye, it's a financial chess move. And here's the encouraging part for fans hoping to see Harrison Smith back in purple. Multiple reports indicate that the Vikings and Smith are still actively talking. The organization is open to bringing him back for the 2026 season if he decides he wants to continue playing. Now let's add another intriguing piece to the story. Earlier this week, Smith posted an Instagram story reacting to the Vikings bringing back linebacker Eric Wilson. Over the announcement graphic, Smith wrote, "Let's go," showing clear excitement about Wilson returning to the team. So what does that mean, Vikings fans? Was Smith just hyping up a former teammate and friend? Or could it be a subtle hint that he's excited about the idea of returning and playing alongside Wilson again in 2026? At this point, we simply don't know. But it definitely keeps the speculation alive. While the Harrison Smith situation grabbed most of the headlines, the Minnesota Vikings also made several other notable roster moves that could have big implications for the defense. The team officially released veteran defensive tackles Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave as part of their cap management strategy. Allen's move is especially important because he was also designated as a post-June 1 cut. That designation dramatically changes the Vikings' financial outlook. Instead of carrying a massive $17.3 million dead cap hit in 2026, the number drops to around $12.6 million. Even better for the Vikings front office. The immediate cap savings this offseason jumps from about $6.5 million to roughly $11.2 million. That's a huge boost in flexibility, giving the Minnesota Vikings more room to maneuver as they continue shaping the roster. It's worth remembering that both Allen and Hargrave were major signings just last offseason. The plan was for them to strengthen what had been a weak Vikings defensive line and generate more pressure up the middle. While they didn't necessarily disappoint, the results didn't fully match the investment. Together, the two defensive tackles produced more than 100 combined tackles and 11 tackles for loss during the season. Those numbers show solid production, but the pass rush impact wasn't quite what the team had hoped for. Each player finished with 3.5 sacks, which simply wasn't enough to consistently disrupt opposing quarterbacks from the interior. When you combine that with the fact that both players were set to carry cap hits above $20 million in 2026, the Vikings clearly decided it was time to reset financially. All of these moves point to a bigger strategy from the Minnesota Vikings front office. They're carefully managing the salary cap while keeping options open for veteran leaders like Harrison Smith. It's a balancing act between honoring franchise legends and building a roster that can compete for championships. And that brings us back to the biggest question hanging over Vikings Nation right now. Will Harrison Smith return for one more season and chase glory with the Minnesota Vikings? Or are we witnessing the final moments of one of the greatest defensive careers in franchise history? One thing is certain. If this truly is the end, Harrison Smith leaves behind a legacy that Vikings fans will never forget. His leadership, clutch plays, and football intelligence helped define an era of Minnesota Vikings defense. But if he decides to come back for one more run, Vikings fans might get one last chance to watch number 22 roaming the field, reading quarterbacks like a book, and delivering those signature game-changing plays. Now I want to hear from you, Vikings Nation. Do you think Harrison Smith should return for the 2026 season? Or do you believe it might be the right time for the legendary safety to hang up the cleats? Drop your thoughts down in the comments because this conversation is just getting started. And if you love staying updated with the latest Minnesota Vikings news, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with every Vikings fan you know. More breaking Vikings updates are coming soon, and you don't want to miss them. Skol. Purple Heart American Football.